There have been a lot of changes this year in law school admissions and with regard to the LSAT in particular. Today, I'll walk you through how they'll impact the coming admissions cycle. For those who don't know me, my name is Steve Schwartz. I've been teaching the LSAT since 2005, and I personally increased my LSAT score from a 152 to a 175 on LSAT test day. Now, LSAT score inflation is probably one of the most notable changes in the law school admissions process, leading to rising LSAT medians. What is the reason for all of this LSAT score inflation? There's a couple of factors. One is the LSAT Flex format introduced at the beginning of the pandemic. The LSAT was moved from being in person to being online on a computer. They shortened the format from 5 sections to 3, and they underestimated the impact this would have on LSAT scores, meaning that LSAT did not recognize the LSAT would be a lot easier when you could take it from home, and when they cut it from 5 sections to 3, nearly cutting the length of the exam in half, removing the extra unscored experimental section, making the whole experience a lot less stressful. Bottom line, they messed up the curve. Too many people got high LSAT scores, and some of those people are still in the law school applicant pool, applying to law school, perhaps, possibly even this fall. But the bigger factor is that the LSAT has become a lot easier for many folks who are getting extra time accommodations. LSAC has become a lot more liberal in granting extra time. It used to be they approved roughly 70% of requests. Now they are approving 98% of requests, meaning you dot your I's, you cross your T's, you fill out the form properly, you get your note from a qualified professional like a doctor or a psychiatrist. You are virtually guaranteed to get whatever extra time you ask for, time and a half, double time, triple time, or beyond. Keep in mind that standard timing is 35 minutes per section. There are students out there getting 160 minutes per section. They're getting more than quadruple time on the LSAT. You better bet that's going to have a significant impact on that person's ability to get a high score, and law schools will never know whether you got extra time or not. So when you wonder, why does Yale Law School have an LSAT median of 175? Why do all of the T14 have LSAT medians of 170 or above? I suspect this is the biggest reason, and this is not changing anytime soon. LSAC has gotten sued several times over the years because in the past they were far too strict in denying extra time. Now the pendulum has swung all the way in the other direction. You could easily make the argument they've become far too liberal in granting extra time. Whatever you think of this change, bottom line, it's going to contribute to rising LSAT medians. This is not going to change because from the admissions side of things, the biggest way law schools can increase their standing in the U.S. News Law School rankings is by accepting applicants with higher GPAs and higher LSAT scores. Of course, GPA inflation, grade inflation isn't changing anytime soon either, but LSAT score inflation, a relatively newer phenomenon, is only going to continue. That's my first big prediction for this coming admission cycle. My second big prediction is that we're going to see an increase in the number of people applying to law school, perhaps in part because of the removal of the logic game section, perhaps in part because of the fact that LSAC's become more liberal in granting extra time. But also, this is an election year, 2024. We have Trump facing off against Kamala Harris, and the past couple of presidential election years, 2016 and 2020, also saw a big increase in the number of people applying to law school, the so-called Trump bump phenomenon. In 2016, Trump versus Hillary, we had an 8% increase in the number of people applying to law school. And in 2020, Trump versus Biden round one, we also saw a significant increase of 13% in the number of people applying to law school. Obviously, the pandemic was a factor that year as well, but the explanation or the rationale behind this is that law school applicants, many of whom are politically engaged, look to go to law school with a desire to change the system, to fight perceived injustices. And so when they see Trump on the ballot, the liberal law school applicant pool looks to go to law school to enter the system to create change from within. That may be what's happening in 2024 as well. We'll see what happens when the numbers come out later this year or early next year in terms of the number of people applying to law school. Third big prediction is with regard to the LSAT content, in particular in logical reasoning. We've seen early indications on LSAT experimental sections going back to November of last year that there was more formal logic in those logical reasoning test sections, meaning that LSAC may be looking to include more formal logic in logical reasoning going forward, starting in August, since of course they cannot test those concepts any longer in the logic game section, since there will not be a logic game section on the LSAT starting in August. So we may see more quantitative reasoning tested in the logical reasoning section, more questions involving numbers versus percentages, absolute versus relative values. We'll see, of course, what happens on the August LSAT going forward, but you may want to brush up on these concepts if you're taking the LSAT in the near future. And if you'd like my help on your journey to scoring a 170 or above, check out the links below to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. And in the meantime, I'll wish you all the best and take care.